All right, what's going on, everybody? This is G here yet again with Solo Fighter, and today we're going to be talking about a whole area of topics. And one of those topics is what went down at UFC 217, which is probably one of the most craziest and spectacular cards that have happened in a while. We're going to be talking about GSP. We're going to be talking about Michael Bisping, TJ Dillashaw, and then we're going to be talking about Dana White and Conor McGregor yet again turning up in headlines for all the wrong reasons. USADA and Anderson Silva, both the same thing. But yet again, here we have Cyrus and we have True Temper Jim with us. Guys, introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Jim. I'm True Temper Rocket, and I'm here to learn.
Hey. Good to be back. Hope you guys enjoy our newest episode. We got a lot to talk about. I'm really looking forward to this episode. There's a lot of things to discuss. Some of the, there's been a lot going on, so can't wait.
All right, so let's get into this. Our first topic is UFC 217, and I mean, 3 champions gone on one card. I mean, Thug Rose going out there just just proving everybody wrong. GSP manhandling the bigger fighter in Michael Bisping, and TJ Dillashaw proving that he is still really that damn good without Team Alpha Male. I mean, let's talk about those 3 for a second. Let's talk about Thug Rose, and pretty much we're going to say is an upset over Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Like, how do you all feel about that?
Well, first of all, I think it's, without question, one of the most shocking contests that have occurred in a long time. Personally, Joanna is my favorite fighter, and I had no doubts that she was going to beat Rose.
Like zero doubt.
Rose,
100%.
100%. There was no question, and then after what happened, Rose completely changed my opinion of her determination and her abilities. And that girl can fight. She really can fight.
So do you feel like that she finally has ended up in the position that the UFC was pushing her to be in ever since The Ultimate Fighter? Like, this is where she was supposed to be, where the UFC made all those spotlights and headliners and everything just for her. Do you feel like this was just destiny as it was?
Well, I think the way I look at Rose's success is I look at it as she's finally worked hard enough to earn what she has, and she's earned every bit of it. Nobody gave it to her. She's gotten better. There's no doubt that she's gotten better, and the way she made Joanna look, she made Joanna look like a little kid out there with no experience at all. It kind of reminded me of when Nunes beat Ronda Rousey. Rousey looked like she didn't belong out there, and in the Namajunas fight, Joanna looked as though she had no business in an octagon. Rose took it to her, and she just flat ass took it to her. She didn't back down at all. She had a strategy. She worked it. She was confident, and Joanna couldn't do a thing to defend what Rose was doing to her. Just amazing. I think it's good for the sport too, because it proves that there's just no ringers in this sport, and anything can happen, and anybody can make themselves better if they want to. And Rose exhibited that. She made herself better, and she beat the queen of the straw weights convincingly. And I'm very happy for her. Very happy.
Yeah, I can see that. That's just crazy. It's just a long road for her. So I could understand that people would be happy for her. I mean, that's just crazy. So like a lot of people believe that there was some luck in there involved, but that didn't look like a lot of luck. That looked like she went in there and she really, as you said, brought that fight to her.
She took away Joanna's crown. She took it from her. She wrested it from her grasp. Joanna didn't give it to her. Rose took it from her. Very impressive. One of the most impressive contests that I've ever seen between two combatants in any sport. In fact, years from now, I'll remember that fight.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
Cyrus, how do you feel about that?
well, I agree with everything that you guys said. It's just one of the most stunning title title wins ever. Joanna was pound for pound either number one, or as far as females go, she was either number one or number two, or like tied with Chris Cyborg for the most dominant female champion in MMA. And Rose Namajunas made her look like she didn't even belong. I mean,
Yeah.
3 minutes, 3 minutes, and Joanna barely got started. I don't even really think she really got started. She threw a couple good leg kicks, but like she hurt her immediately, and then dropped her again 3 minutes later. Like she from the off, she hurt her, got her down. I mean, Joanna has some of the best, I mean, takedown defense and in the game. And even once you take her down, she's one of the best. She's one of the best out there, getting right back up, and she did. But then, like that's about the best thing you can say about her. And I'm not dumping on her. I'm just saying that's just how good Rose looked. Like there's no like I've got nothing but respect for Joanna. Like I'm a huge fan, and I always will be. But I feel the same way about Rose. That's why I didn't pick. I actually for a change, I actually did very good on my picks this time. And I got everything right, but this fight was one of the fights I just refused to pick because, like, I just knew it was too close, and people were like, completely writing Rose off, and you just cannot write Rose off. I don't care who she's fighting. She could be fighting Cyborg. You just can't write her off. I said Joanna was favorite, and she deserves to be because, like, she's earned that. But, like, that I could see her winning. There was too many ways I could see her winning, and just like there was so many ways I could see Joanna winning. So I decided not to pick because I just didn't know. And I'm also like part of it is because I'm a huge fan of both women. But I mean, from beginning to end, Rose was different class. From the build up,
Right.
Joanna went after hard. I think she went after her harder than any other opponent. She went after her harder than like up till now. Until then, was her biggest rival, Claudia Gadelha. Like they those two do not like each other, but yet she went after Rose even harder. She got even more personal. I mean, some people thought she crossed the line. Like, she mocked her history of mental illness, which is pretty harsh. Like, as someone who suffers from depression and things like that, like that's like if you're gonna make fun of someone's mental illness or depression, you really don't like him. You're really trying, and I don't judge her for that. I just think she knew she was in for it. I don't think a lot of people thought that she overlooked Rose or thought or underestimated Rose. I don't think so. I think she felt threatened. I think she knew exactly what she was in for, and that just makes Rose Namajunas' Thug Rose victory even more impressive. It was, and like, it couldn't happen to a better person. And I just want to say real quick before saying anything else that anybody who says that Joanna, I just disagree with anyone who says that Joanna doesn't deserve an immediate matchup. This was her sixth title defense. She's been flawless in the UFC. Like immediate.
It's just crazy to say that Joanna doesn't deserve that immediate matchup because of how she lost. But I mean, look how long she's been champion, and you have to really. It's like people have to think about this in a fair, at least maybe fair situation and everything. She's defended the belt. She's been a dominant champion, and look at the other people who have lost in way worse ways, or who don't even have multiple championship defenses that got immediate rematches.
Yeah, as spectacular as the loss was, she got blasted. She didn't get outclassed. She didn't get taken apart. It wasn't a 5-round dismantling. So of course she deserves it. And even if she got dismantled for 5 rounds, as the champ of a 6-time defending champ, she deserves. She's earned it 100 times over. So there's no argument against her getting an immediate rematch. And shame on Dana White for not answering with a big fat yes, because he owes her. They owe her that rematch. She's earned it. There's no question she deserves it. Once you defend, as far as I'm concerned, once you defend your title 3 times and more, you earn it. It should be set in stone. Unless you don't want it.
Well, GSP walks in with his dick hanging out and gets an immediate title fight. Now, you can't tell me that Joanna doesn't deserve an immediate rematch if she wants it.
Exactly, and I don't have a problem. I didn't really have a problem with GSP getting that title shot. By the way, I had a problem.
Well, whether you got a problem or not, it follows logic that Joanna would get a rematch.
Yeah, how about justice? How about like, just good old America? Like, what's fair is fair. Well, you eat what you kill, right?
That doesn't work in the UFC. But
obviously not. Not when you're Jose Aldo. Not when you're Chuck Liddell.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to belabor the point, but Joanna's going to get a rematch. I know that.
I hope she does, but like it was very revealing that they asked her, like, do you expect to get a rematch? And she said, I don't know. That's not good. That's not a good sign. And then when her, whatever you want to call it, Dana White says, I don't know, we'll have to see. That's an insult. That's a diss.
Dana will say anything to start controversy. Dana is the king of controversy. He's not much different than Donald Trump to initiate controversy.
You said that before, and you're 100% right. I mean, there's a reason they're friends. Yeah, well, I don't. But yeah, just to get back to Rose, like,
all right,
what a great champion! She's gonna be great. Like, whatever happens, whatever the results, like this to me, like, and I really hope those idiots at the UFC and at WME IMG, I hope they understand that they have something special in Rose Namajunas. Like, she could be a superstar. She is a superstar. It's just no one's worked with her yet. I hope they work with her. I hope they don't give her the Amanda Nunes treatment. I really hope they work with her and
they have
give
no
her
reason not to work with her, considering that she, as I said, she was the person that they were pushing like the hardest on the Ultimate Fighter when she was in that season. Like, they were pushing her hardcore. So the only reason why I see they wouldn't push her is because they could get somebody like Paige Van Zandt.
Well, there's that, but there's also, this is very interesting, Larry Pepe of Pro MMA Radio, he pointed out to the fact that Joanna Jędrzejczyk is signed to WME IMG, which she shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. They shouldn't own the promotion and their company. Like, that's illegal in boxing. It's a conflict of interest. So you're saying that the fact that just like Ronda is signed to WME IMG as a client, it could work against Rose in the sense that Joanna is one of theirs and Rose isn't. And if you remember, Amanda Nunes beat Ronda and didn't get any kind of push, promotional push. She didn't get any rub. She didn't get so a little bit like, I mean, Holly got some rub, but that's because people were really interested. But the UFC itself didn't really do shit.
Well, they won't do shit because she doesn't represent tits and ass.
Well, and other stuff like Amanda Nunes. I mean, like she's not ugly, and Holly is not. I think Holly is a beautiful woman. It's just Dana takes everything personally. Whether he likes you or not, it's all personal. And back in the day, that was before WME IMG, before William Morris took over. He wasn't too happy with Holly beating his favorite fighter. I mean, he considers Ronda a friend or even a daughter. I don't know exactly like how he sees her, but he's very close to Ronda. And he didn't have very many very good things to say about Holly. Like, actually, when he'd come out and talk about Holly, it was usually to speak negatively or to insult her manager. And then with Amanda Nunes, the same thing happened. Like, if anything, with Amanda Nunes, it was even worse. I mean, she didn't help herself a couple times, but she didn't do anything unforgivable. I mean, she pulled out at the last minute, which was kind of, but if she's sick, she's sick. He didn't do anything to help her. He kind of, he threw her under the bus, as he always does, which is really stupid and out of line and promotional malpractice, basically. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there is a chance that the fact that she beat one of theirs could work against her. Like, it makes no sense that they wouldn't get on that. I mean, anybody can see Rose as a superstar. Anybody. But there is that chance, because of conflict of interest, because of the way the UFC is run. So I just wanted to point that out. But I really hope I mean, for Christ's sakes, like that William Morris, they aren't like that successful by passing up golden opportunities like that. And I mean, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like they just got a superstar, a genuine potential superstar dropped in their laps for free. Like, if they don't, like, to me already, they've made tons of mistakes, some really dumb ones. But if they don't grab this one with both hands, then like I can tell you, like, they aren't going to be number one for very much longer. Like, Bellator is going to take over, or somebody else. But I mean, like everybody's making moves on the UFC. Everybody's catching up to the UFC. You've got ACB, every month they're getting closer. They're getting bigger and better players. You've got ONE FC getting bigger and bigger, and then Bellator are getting closer. They fighters, like elite fighters. I mean, Bellator are so close, and now I'm going to kind of jump from one thing to the other here. But Bellator are getting so close, are getting so big now, that once upon a time, Johnny Hendricks, like, that was the last fight on his deal, and it would have been a no-brainer for them to sign him. I don't even think they're going to be interested. I don't even think Bellator are going to sign him now. Like, considering, like, where he's at in his career, his record, I don't even think it's a given that Johnny Hendricks gets signed by Bellator. He might have to sign somewhere else if he wants to continue his career, because it's not so much because of his record; it's his performances and the fact that he can't really be counted on to make weight. So,
okay,
like,
I was going to say, like, counted on in terms of his skill or his weight cut.
yeah, it's just like it's his I've always said, Scott Coker, it's not your record that he looks at so much, it's your performances. If you put spectacular performances, he'll sign you. It doesn't matter what your record is. But the performances have not been good. And that failure to make weight, like, he's not that big. I'm taller and bigger than Johnny Hendricks. He's a big boy, but it's not that hard for him to make 185. It really isn't. Like, he's a pro. He's done it. And remember, Johnny Hendricks is one of the greatest wrestlers of the last, like, decade or so in the States. Like, he's a legendary wrestler, so he must have made weight hundreds of times. So he knows how to do it. So there's no excuse for him not. Okay, the welterweight, he's getting older, fine. But for him to miss middleweight, that's not a good sign. That's really bad. And I mean, I don't know if you saw the weighing video, the official weigh-ins prior to UFC 217. He was surprised he made the weight. That's not good. That's not good. I'm not dumping on like a fighter here. I'm just calling it like I see it. There's something there. There's something missing. I don't know if he's like lost.
All right, fair enough. So,
MMA.
I mean, in terms and everything, let's talk about one of the people that he's fought. That's one of his best performances, GSP, who was also on to UFC 217. Come on now. Like, who really saw GSP manhandling Michael Bisping like that? Who did?
I did. I called that. Tooted my own horn shamelessly, but I called that. I said he was going to blast through the worst, most despicable champion we've ever had in the UFC. And he did. He completely outclassed him. Bisping fought scared. And he ran through him, through as he said, a much bigger guy. I mean, Michael the Cunt Bisping is actually a light heavyweight, fighting at middleweight. George is a welterweight and not one of the biggest ones anymore. I mean, he used to be really big. Now he's as far as size and weight and whatever, he's a run like as far as his size, he's a run of the mill. He's like just the average welterweight. If anything, like when you look at some of the guys fighting a welterweight nowadays, he's actually on the smaller side. Like, that was just, yeah, that was one of the most amazing performances of his career. And to think that he hadn't fought in in over 3 years and a half, for him to just completely physically dominate a much bigger man. I mean, is it just me, or did you guys notice that George looked like the bigger man in that cage?
Not according to Dana White.
Yeah, well. But, I mean, what a performance. It's a strange one because he was spectacular, but he was not flawless. Like, it's funny, like the fact that he made mistakes, that his takedowns were really good. They weren't like vintage GSP. Like, you could see he struggled with the extra weight. He had to like take a breather a couple times, like especially at the end of the second round, he slowed down a little bit. But I think it was conscious. I don't think he was gassed like people thought, because he fought just fine in the third. I think he, like you could see he really struggled with the weight. Like, he wasn't used to it. But I mean, but he was spectacular. He was offensive. He was aggressive. Like, one of his best performances. And the fact, like, I think it was Dwayne Bang Ludwig who said, like, it was one of his least, like, one of his most flawed. What did he say? He said it was the most un-GSP performance from GSP. Yeah, it was one of his most spectacular ones, and I couldn't agree more. Like, his takedowns weren't as explosive, not nearly as explosive as they used to be. Like, when you see him versus, well, pretty much anyone else, they were more like grinding takedowns, like wrestler. Like, GSP's double legs are just so explosive. It's like you couldn't do anything about him. Like, remember, the first one that comes to mind is the way he took down Thiago Alves at UFC 100. I mean, they were like, there was nothing he could do, and he had one of the best takedown defenses of the day.
Double leg blasts.
Yeah, exactly. Double leg blast. They weren't takedowns; they were blasts. He just blasts right through you, and I mean, like, he was known for taking, like, he trained with light heavyweights and heavyweights. He used to take guys like Randy Couture and what's his name? Rashad Evans down, like at will. And these guys are super hard to take down. I mean, come on, we're talking about Randy Couture here, you know. So, yeah, but you could see he had to grind through him. I guess it had to do something with the, it had everything to do with like the extra weight he put on. So he was still, and like, if you want to call it ring rust, but he didn't look that rusty to me. It's just, he had to put more effort into it.
Well,
his jab was there, though.
He's not going to be sharp because how long has it been since the guy's been in an octagon?
3 years and a half, nearly 4.
Okay.
2014, man.
Anybody's going to be stale after that long.
Right? Yeah, but I mean, it's just like head and shoulders completely outclassed Bisping.
Well,
like,
that's not saying a whole lot.
I think the only good the only good sequence for Bisping was when he took him down in the 3rd round and he got bloodied. Like he opened cuts, but then again, anyone who knows GSP knows that he cuts really easy and he bruises really easy. But still, that was his only good sequence. Otherwise, it was all GSP the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like he completely he made an example of Bisping and he choked him out. So, I mean, and like to me, I'm not even like, I don't want to disrespect anyone, but that puts him ahead of, like, I've always said, I find it really hard to pick between the two of them. But to me, like, in my personal opinion, the 2 greatest are GSP, John Jones, and then I put
Mighty Mouse? How's Mighty Mouse?
Mighty Mouse just under the 2 of them, just under. But I'm not going to argue with anyone who proclaims Mighty Mouse the greatest, because I mean I have nothing but respect for him.
Okay, so Jim, how do you feel about GSP being the current GOAT or considered as the current GOAT?
Actually, I don't put much. I don't put much credence in trying to put people into categories like the greatest of all time and the yada yada yada. That doesn't interest me at all. GSP showed up. He's got something under his sleeve that he wants to accomplish, and becoming a champion again isn't what he's looking for. He's looking to do something else. I don't know what it is, but he's looking to do something else.
Whatever he's looking for, I think he's earned it, though.
I expected. Oh, I don't care if he's earned it or not. Who knows what he's up to? I don't know that yet. But beating Bisping is no big deal. I mean, when Bisping beat. What was the name of the guy he beat to get the championship? Rockhold, yeah. Beating Rockhold, we all saw that. Rockhold made a mistake. I think if I could have had that opening, I could have knocked him down too. It's just that's the way MMA is. And then Bisping becomes champion. He sleeps on the belt for a year. For whatever reasons, I haven't figured that out yet. And now GSP has the belt. Now we'll see what happens with whatever GSP has in mind. Maybe he's out of money. I don't know why he came back. Who knows? Or maybe I'm kind of thinking I'm hoping that he has something in mind to organize the fighters into a union. That's what I'm hoping he has in mind.
Well, he's already tried that. We'll see. Now that he's champion, maybe he'll get back to it.
Well, yeah, maybe so. Or he plain needs the money. I don't know.
Well, I'm pretty sure he's breaking in a lot of it in between sponsors and his next possible fight that could come up. He's going to be raking in some money.
Uh-huh.
I got a question for you, Jim, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because you were saying you're not really interested. So, like, I know you and I are both huge basketball fans, like especially when it comes to the NBA.
Okay.
But don't you have an opinion on who the greatest is in that game? Like personally, Michael Jordan.
When it's discussed, I think it's Michael Jordan. But again, Michael Jordan played in an era, and I put a lot of credence into eras of basketball, eras of athletic, eras of human uh, endeavor. And Michael Jordan's era is different than this era. I don't know how Michael Jordan would fare in this area, in this era. And I certainly don't know how today's basketball players would fare back in the 70s and 80s. I don't know. But in actuality, if somebody wants to say that what's that asshole's name? LeBron James. If somebody wants to say that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time, what runs through my head is, okay, fine. If it blows your dress up, fine. Go ahead and say that. But at the same time, I'm saying you're stupid for trying to say that he is the greatest of all time because he didn't live back and play basketball back in Michael Jordan's time. So how the fuck do you know? You don't know.
I mean, it's the easiest thing in the world to discredit, to blow through that argument. It's a non-starter.
Well, for that reason,
has ever been the reason his team lost the final. He lost the final. He was the reason Miami lost the final in 2010. No, 2011.
Whatever.
Right?
But
10 or 2011. He lost the Miami Heat the final. So no great player. You can't lose the final. Can't be the reason of an NBA Finals and then call yourself the greatest. You can't lose more finals than you win.
Well,
and then call yourself the greatest.
When people talk about LeBron James, I point out one thing that he does, that he has done twice, and he's getting ready to do it the third time. And that is when he leaves death and destruction.
Exactly.
He left Cleveland the first time and left it a mess. Then he leaves Miami and he leaves that a mess. Now he's getting ready to leave Cleveland and go out to LA and run that outfit. And he's going to leave it a mess. You have to look at those things and say, greatest basketball player of all time? I don't think so. James makes himself look good all the time. He never fails. He doesn't ever fail to do that, even when his team is getting slaughtered. He always looks good. Always.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why you can't do all this, pull all that shit, and then call yourself the greatest. So
no, you can't.
That's why I do we shouldn't do that all the time. But I am a sucker for those kind of debates and those kind of discussions. I enjoy it in MMA as well, and I think it's good to talk to have those discussions. Like, who's the GOAT? We don't have to call it the GOAT, but I think it's important to have these discussions because honor those who deserve to be honored.
Well,
and
you like to say that John Jones is the greatest of all time. Well,
him and George, that's
in the octagon, he could very well be the greatest of all time. But I view an athlete 24 hours a day, and by taking that view, John Jones is not the greatest of all time.
Well, that's fair enough. That is fair enough. Like, to some people, they think that but see, I get a bit touchy with that because when you're talking about the greatest at what he does, behavior outside the cage shouldn't come into it, as far as I'm concerned. But some people want to rate that. That's fine. But it's like, I've already had that debate with another friend because he was saying that rules him out. His mistakes. Yeah. But I mean, if Michael Jordan killed somebody tomorrow, that doesn't mean that LeBron is better than him. You understand? As a basketball player, as a human being, he might be the worst piece of shit. He might turn out to be, but it doesn't change what he's accomplished before. Just like
Well,
it doesn't.
you take McLeprechaun.
Hmm.
Take away all the bullshit that he represents outside of the ring, and he's a pretty good guy. If you want to look
Yeah,
at it
yeah, no,
like
but we're
that.
not talking about the man. We're not talking about the man here. We're talking about the achievements. And Leprechaun, when we're talking about the greatest, he ain't even in the top 25. Not even close. I can list you 25 fighters right now, no problem, that are better than McGregor in every way, that are way ahead of him.
All right. Well,
I mean, you've got.
we'll take 5.
Go ahead, Gerald. Sorry.
Give us 5.
Give us 5. Randy Couture.
Why?
Chuck Liddell. Randy Couture, because he's won titles in 2 weight classes, I believe 5 times over.
Okay.
Twice
Yep.
at heavyweight, 3 times at light heavyweight. He's never failed to defend the title. Every title he had, he defended it. That's just already, that makes him better. He fought in 3 different eras. He came into MMA extremely late. He came into MMA, he was 37 or 38 years old. He fought the best. He never ducked anybody. Used to defend his title against anyone. He never used any excuses. And, I mean, look who he beat. Look at the list of guys he beat. He just ran through everybody. And he got written off plenty of times. And at the same time, okay, there I'm touching, but he was probably the first athlete, fighter, MMA fighter to ever speak up for his fellow fighters. He to this day, he's an example for other fighters to fight for their rights. He was the first one to talk about fiduciary rights, image rights, all that. And I mean, as far as like Randy Couture in the cage, there is nothing you can say against his record. That his record is spotless. It's beautiful. I mean, I'd say second, Chuck Liddell.
Okay.
5-time defending champion. One of the greatest light heavyweights ever. One of the greatest knockout artists ever. And same thing goes for him. I mean, and one of the ultimate, well, probably the greatest example in MMA of a fighter that needs to be protected from himself. Because this guy just took on all comers, never ducked anybody. Won, whether he lost, won, or drew, he always did it with honor. So there's the other one. Tito Ortiz.
Okay.
Trailblazer. MMA's first superstar. And really, probably the one fighter that can ever say he was bigger than the UFC.
Okay.
Like, remember, that's 3, right?
Yep. Hit us with the other 2.
Matt Hughes. 5-time defending champion.
Okay.
5-time defended his title 5 times in a row and 7 times altogether. 2-time UFC welterweight champion, one of the greatest to ever do it. There's another one. And I'm not even going to mention the most obvious ones, okay? I'm not even going to mention GSP. I'm not even going to mention Anderson Silva. I'm not going to mention Ronda Rousey, and I'm not going to mention Mighty Mouse. I'm going to mention the harder ones.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm up to 3 right now, right?
You're at 4.
I'm up to 4. Okay, here's the 5th. BJ Penn.
Okay. Makes sense.
There you go. BJ Penn, same thing. But I mean, like, it's very easy. I don't even have to list his accomplishments, but I will. But each and every person, like even Johnny Hendricks is more of a champion. You know how I feel about. I don't hate him, but I'm not a big fan of his. But even he can claim to be a greater champion than McLeprechaun because he defended. He lost, but he defended. Robbie Lawler is a greater champion.
Okay. Cool.
I could go on. 25, easy. And
All
I mean,
right,
I'm not even gonna go down the road of he's not a complete fighter.
Well,
I'm not gonna go down.
Well,
Pardon me?
About Leprechaun here. Let's talk about the stuff that he continues to do, like his latest folly of jumping in the ring at Bellator and causing a whole crap ton of stuff, is that one of the reasons, True Temper, Jim, Cyrus, that you all are kind of
Yeah.
missing him from that? Like, let's talk about that.
Well, I don't think he's going to come back. I don't. He said once he's not going to fight unless he gets a piece of the company, and the company's not going to give him ownership. Secondly, he should, for what he did, and I read the Twitter or the whatever that IM thing was from the referee in that night of that fight.
Uh-huh.
The McGregor, well, simply put, McGregor had no business in there. The referee was trying to do his job, and McGregor was interfering with that. And I think, from what I've read and from opinions I've read, he should get a suspension of anywhere from 6 months to a year and be fined for what he did.
Ouch.
But instead, all he does is say he's sorry and then make an excuse. He says he's sorry, so he's trying to apologize, but he's not apologizing. He says he's sorry. In fact, he says he's sincerely sorry, but he makes an excuse for what he did. That doesn't excuse what he did, and it's certainly not an apology. The man needs to be sanctioned, and sanctioning bodies, all of them, have to stick it to this guy and make it stick.
Right.
I couldn't agree more. It's like, it's not whether they want to or not, whether they're cool with him or not. I'm not even talking about on a moral standpoint. It's just for image, for just because the UFC wants to be recognized as a major league, promotion, whatever you want to fucking call it. Just out of respect for your own company or promotion, you have to. You owe it to yourself to sanction him, because otherwise you look like Bush League. They've banned fighters life for less. Remember, what's his name? He fights for LFA now. God, I can't remember his name.
Are you talking about Gerald Harris? No, not Gerald Harris.
He fought this guy. He's actually really talented. He fought Rafael Dos Anjos, and the fight was stopped too early. He wasn't happy, and he kind of shoved. Yeah,
no, that was Gerald Harris.
No, it was Andre the Bull Harrison. Andre Harrison, I think. Something like that. Yeah, it was something Harrison. They called him the Bull or something. And, or maybe Gerald Harris, I don't know. But anyways, whatever his name was, he got banned for life. Like, he got blackballed in a major way. Dana didn't even see it. He heard that he put his hands on the ref. Like, one of the only thing worse than missing weight in MMA
is messing with a ref.
Is putting your hands on executives or staff. You're just not allowed to do that. And I mean, not only like, I mean, I've seen guys kicked out, like blackballed from the UFC for life for just shoving. He didn't just shove him; he went after him. He assaulted him. Like, if he did that in the street, that would be called assault. And he open-handedly, I mean, he slapped another member of the staff across the face.
Yeah.
That's something else. That's like assault. And, like, I'm not trying, I'm just calling it like it is. Like, there's no excuse for what he did. He was not provoked. I mean, already he should be suspended just for getting into the cage before the fight was called. The fight hadn't been called off. You're not even allowed, even if he called the fight off, you're not allowed in until the referee tells you can come in.
That's right, because the referee
is worth suspension.
The referee is God in the octagon.
Yep.
Absolutely. But he went after the ref, then he assaulted another member of staff. There was no excuse. There's no excuse for what he did. And anyone else, almost pretty much anyone else, would have been castigated, and like we'll talk about it later. But when you see how Dana White has been going after like some other great champions, greater champions than him, because McLeprechaun is no champion because he's never defended a goddamn belt. Like it's just if they don't do anything, which I would not be surprised if they didn't.
Yeah.
Yourself look like Bush League because it means like it's the ultimate fighting Connor. It's already been called.
What do you guys think about this as a ploy? As a ploy to get so that McGregor doesn't have to fight Ferguson.
I don't know. It could be. I mean, he's that stupid right now. He's that delusional. But at the same time, like why would he do that? Like,
no, I think Dana White could have even been in on it.
Maybe. I wouldn't put anything past it, but it sounds really stupid, even for him, for both of them.
In fact, remember...
Actually, the doesn't sound too stupid, but, I mean, Dana does stupid things. He ain't stupid, if you see what I mean. Like, he says stupid things all the time, but, I mean, you don't get to where Dana is by being stupid, if you see what I mean. Like,
if you remember, McGregor was going to fight Diaz. And then remember that got called off? And then he didn't meet. He got called off because McGregor didn't show up for some.
Press conference.
Okay, I think that was a ploy by McGregor and Dana to delay the fight because McGregor wasn't prepared to fight Diaz, and he needed more time.
Possible.
And he needed more time to prepare, and it was a good thing he did because he needed it. Okay.
Yeah, well, absolutely, I agree with that. That's true.
And I think
that is more than likely.
I think this jumping into the ring here was a ploy, certainly by McGregor, and maybe Dana was in on it too. But I can tell you what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that McGregor is not getting in the octagon with Tony Ferguson to defend his belt. And I'll guarantee you another thing, and that is that Dana won't strip him of that belt either.
Nope.
You know what? You're starting to really convince me. At first I was like, but you know what? I wouldn't, like the guy...
I could be full of shit, Cyrus.
No,
but...
You're not. After listening to what you just said, it's making more and more sense now to me.
Well, sure.
It's making a lot, and sadly, it's making a lot of sense. And I'm not saying like sadly because of you, sadly because of everything I've seen from these two, especially McLeprechaun and his just refusal. His refusal to ever defend the title.
It's certainly a possibility, don't you think?
Excuse me? Pardon me?
It's certainly a possibility, don't you think?
No, absolutely. No, you've convinced me. It's a definite possibility, and I'm starting to think, you know what? I really think that's what's going on now. Like,
it's WWE wrestling. That's all it is.
I'm sorry, Gerald. Like, what do you think of like the whole thing, the whole situation? What do you think about this like latest theory?
You know what? It's very positive. You can't put anything past Dana White when it comes to Conor McGregor. Like that's basically It's like Conor McGregor has the UFC, Dana White, WME all in a stranglehold, and they're going to do whatever they need to possibly do to make sure that Conor McGregor continues making them lots of money.
Yep. That's right.
Anything that they could cover for him, anything that they could do to make him look good, anything that they could do to basically just blow over things, even when he screws up in a major sense, is in their best interest. And even if they get busted covering for Conor McGregor, like this recent thing where the UFC's like they pulled Conor McGregor off of the December 30th card, but nobody has even heard of, or no fighter has heard of Conor McGregor being signed to fight anybody on December 30th. Like that could have just been like, oh well, we'll just pacify the masses by saying we're going to punish Conor McGregor by pulling him off the December 30th card that he had no part of in the first place. And
Wait a minute, Gerald.
Mhm.
Wasn't it set up that he was going to meet Tony Ferguson?
Yes, but that's the thing.
Not really, no.
It's
Nothing
saying,
official.
yeah, nothing official.
What?
But they're saying that they pulled him off the December 30th
Wait,
card.
whoa! I thought that was official. I thought that was
No,
that
no,
was
no, no.
that was going down. That he was going to meet Tony.
No, the
That's
only
still official, but the date was not official.
no, it
Okay.
wasn't official either. He hadn't confirmed that he was going to meet Tony. The closest thing he did to make it official was saying Tony should be first. But remember, when Tony fought Kevin Lee for the interim title,
Yeah.
he did say, while wearing a McLeprechaun boxing T-shirt, that the interim title did not guarantee either man a shot at McLeprechaun's belt. Well, it's not his belt, but at the actual lightweight title. Remember that? He actually said these words.
Who said that?
Dana White.
Who else?
Well,
Who
then
else?
what the fuck good is an interim title? What the fuck good is an interim title?
Have no
Thank
idea.
you.
No
Don't
idea.
mean shit. Don't mean shit.
It don't mean
And I've
shit.
always said that interim titles in the UFC and in boxing too is a bunch of shit. Nothing but shit.
You know who agrees with you?
Who?
Brett fucking Ratner, a man I have deep respect for, and works for the UFC. He used to work for the Nevada Commission.
Yeah.
He works with the UFC, and he's one of the main reasons MMA is legal. Professional pro MMA is legal in the state of New York. Like, that man is a genius. And I forgot to. I mean, it's just a quick segue here. This past week, they had a hearing, a Senate hearing for fighters' rights in the Senate, and Randy Couture was there. Marquane Mullen was there, the senator from, I always forget, I think he's Oklahoma or something. He's a House Speaker. Like, this week he got Brett Ratner to actually admit that UFC belts are basically shit.
Oh yeah,
Because they don't mean
that video.
That was amazing. Like, and Brett Ratner is brilliant at his job, but Marquane Mullen got him to admit that UFC belts do not mean shit. Basically, like, they do not always represent the best. That they are for entertainment purposes. And for Brett Ratner, who's as smooth as you get, to have to admit that, to get cornered into admitting that, because basically that's all he had to do. Marquane Mullen cornered him with, how do you explain the president of the UFC publicly stating that an interim title win does not guarantee you the shot at the next shot at the title,
Right.
especially if nobody's injured, and Tony isn't injured, or Tony can fight tomorrow. For Dana to come out and say that when that fight was being made, that that's just like, that ends any and all arguments. So basically, the lightweight champion, you can call him Tony El Kukui Ferguson. The middleweight champion, while bitch being held whatever belt he had, was Robert Whittaker or even Yoel Romero. Like, they should have both been stripped a long time ago for just blatant refusal to fight anybody resembling an elite middleweight or lightweight, because that's exactly what or featherweight in Leprechaun's case. Featherweight, lightweight. He's never defended. He should have been stripped. He should have been stripped, and even like that lightweight belt should have been stripped. Like, that should have been actually on the table. Like, you want to fight Mayweather, you have to vacate. That's more than fair. Like, the money he made from that fight, whatever it was more than made up for him losing that belt. That he was never going to defend. That he had no intention of defending anyways.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know if you heard his latest comments. Like, okay, that whole jumping into the cage was like the most ridiculous and the most, shocking, I guess. But it's not that shocking if you get to know him. But the other one that was really like he had an interview this week and he was bleeding on about legitimizing the lightweight belt, like giving it honor and giving it legitimacy by defending it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you got some nerve, you little twat. Like, seriously? Like, the lightweight belt was always legit. It's one of the most legit belts. I mean, the only thing that's more legit than the lightweight belt is the welterweight belt, I'd say. I mean, lightweight has always been legit.
What's the point?
No, he's the one who. I mean, no one has done more harm or besmirched UFC titles in history than McLeprechaun because he's never defended it.
I think that's a mistake. It's not McGregor's fault. It's the UFC's fault for allowing it to happen. The UFC pays the bills, writes the checks. They're the ones in charge, not McLeprechaun.
Yep, but he's been allowed to do that then.
So far, now that's kind of not so true, considering how much of a stranglehold that Conor McGregor has on them.
Well, I'll tell you how much of a stranglehold he's got. Kick his ass out, strip him.
Oh, see, and that's the thing. That's what a lot of people say. That's what they should do and everything. But the UFC as a business and everything is going to look at that. They're going to say, we're going to lose possibly hundreds of millions of dollars if we release Conor McGregor, especially if he were to go anywhere else, which he probably wouldn't. Maybe if Bellator has such deep pockets, they will lose possibly hundreds of millions of dollars, and that is definitely a risk that is way out of their comfort zone, and that's just where they're at. As a business,
I'd like to counter that. That's a great argument, Gerald. I'd like to counter it. I'd like to counter it with an argument. Let me just list a few names here. Rory Red King McDonald.
Okay.
Gegard Mousasi.
All right.
Lorenz Larkin.
Okay.
Benson Henderson.
Yeah.
Ungrateful bastards, all of them.
Right? Phil Davis.
Okay.
Bader.
All right. But can I counter that as well?
And that's 7 fighters. But can you really tell me, and like every single one of them have championship potential, either have worn a belt, fought for the belt, or should have fought for the belt? Can you really tell me that, like, it's not just about the money, it's also about legitimacy? Can you really tell me that McGregor is worth more than all of those guys put together?
Yes.
And worth all of the other fighters for that gonna leave? Yes. I don't think so.
Here's the reason why I say yes. If you go back and you look at the pay-per-view numbers, the money generated by Conor McGregor alone by himself compared to those other fighters, he surpasses all of those fighters put together by himself. But
I disagree.
Or fighters.
I disagree because he was put. I'm sorry, Gerald. I'll let you finish. No, you finish. You finish.
Oh, okay. So the thing is, fighters like Phil Davis, Brian Bader, Benson Henderson, Gegard Mousasi and everything like that. For people that say, look at them, look at their stats, look at their history, look at their fights, Conor McGregor as a fighter doesn't even come close to their type of pedigree as a fighter. But
that I agree.
Yes, but when it comes to pure hardcore cash, just cash by itself and everything.
McGregor.
All of them put together in terms of sponsorships, pay-per-views, just even sitting down and having a sit-down talk McGregor generates more money than all of them put together. And as a business, sure, you want something that makes your business legit and filled with quality, but then even with legitimacy and quality, you still need money. And McGregor to the UFC right now is that money.
And UFC is all about
Right.
money.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to counter that argument.
Go for it.
Okay. I personally disagree with this whole thing of like the money he generates. He's generated plenty of money, but it's not so much him as in his events. The events he's been on, they're not his, by the way. Like, you look at his fight cards. Like, that argument, I'd agree with it if we were talking about GSP. I'd agree with this argument completely if we were talking about Ronda. I disagree when it comes to McLeprechaun because no one, and I mean no one, has had the push, the investment that he's had. Oh, I'd agree with it if we were talking about Brock Lesnar, because
Okay.
Brock Lesnar just walked in a superstar, and he not only walked in a superstar, he walked in with millions of fans.
Okay.
But look at his pay-per-view cards, McLeprechauns. No one has been on more stacked pay-per-view cards than him, than he has. And I read an article a few weeks back. I believe it was the ESPN economist guy. I mean, that guy's a genius when it comes to numbers. He's like the Dave Meltzer of ESPN. I always forget his name. He was the one who broke, like 3 months before it became official that the UFC were being sold. And, you know, they jumped all over him. But I think he wrote this article, and I read that he estimated that the UFC had invested more than $250 million into McLeprechaun, like promoting him, putting him on every show.
What?
Yeah. No one. Not even close. I bet you he's had more push than the entire roster in history. The rest. Like, even GSP didn't get that kind of rub. Like, they've invested more than $250 million pushing him down our throats. Remember, we used to have interviews with him when he had nothing to do with the fight card. And let me list a few pay-per-views and see what you guys think. UFC 189. You guys remember that one? One of the greatest cards ever. One of the most spectacular, but also one of the most stacked cards ever. UFC 194. UFC 196. UFC 202. UFC 205. Those, to me, in my personal opinion, all have something in common, is that every single fight on these cards, virtually every single fight on these cards were worthy, whether from the early prelims to the main card, to the pay-per-view card. Each and every one of those fights could have been a headliner. Whether they could have headlined a pay-per-view or a fight night card, each and every one of them were recognizable fighters. They were big fighters. There was no small fights on any of these cards. UFC 196 was probably the smallest of them, but still, 194 is one of the, just stacked. I mean, the biggest one was 202, 205. 205. I mean, the prelims had fights like Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Michael Johnson. Yeah, that could headline any single UFC fight night. You had fucking Chris Weidman versus Yoel Romero. That could headline any pay-per-view. You had freaking Misha Tate versus I mean, she's a headliner. She was a star. I mean, it's just stacked from top to bottom. Each and every one of those cards. So, like, all this shit about like he's a superstar. No, he is a star, but he was built from the ground up like no one else before him.
Yes.
Like he didn't walk in a superstar. They made him. You can't say that about Ronda. Ronda, often was given shit cards and made gold out of them. And I'm not like dumping on any of the other fighters that fought on her cards, but they were not very well built. They weren't particularly. Like I remember UFC 190 when she beat Betch Correa. That was not a great card. It was a bummer of a card. Like we got to see the end of the very, very sad and underwhelming end of one of the greatest ever in Nogueira.
Yeah.
That was a heartbreaking fight. It was a bummer of a fight. He lost to the skyscraper. What's his name from Holland?
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing but respect for Steven Struve, but you can't tell me that Nogueira, at even like a quarter of his best, wouldn't have wiped the floor with him. Like this, I mean, no disrespect again to Struve, but he's an excellent fighter. But Nogueira was one of the greatest heavyweights ever. And that was a horrible fight. And there was a lot of it wasn't a great card. It wasn't well put together, but they took it for granted because they knew just the fact that that's a star. Like,
okay.
Like that, a star, you got a star, and that works in Hollywood, that works on any, like you put a star in a bad movie and you still make $100 million, that's a star.
Yeah.
You put Ronda on any card and she'll make you 1 million pay-per-view buys, that's a star. You put Gina Carano anywhere and you'll get 1 million viewers, that's a star.
All right.
Like, to me, like, I'm much more impressed with the fact that McLeprechaun's nonsense last weekend helped generate 1 million viewers for Bellator. That's right. Way more impressive than UFC 194 selling 1.2 million pay-per-view buys.
All right.
It's a lot more impressive. Like, and also, you're not that big a star if your promotion has to lie about how many pay-per-views you sell, because pretty much every single pay-per-view he's been on, they've lied. Like, they lied about 189. They said it sold way over 1 million when it only sold 800,000 or just over 800,000. They lied about UFC 196 breaking the all-time record. But it didn't. Like, UFC 100 is still sitting top. UFC 100 sold between 1.6 and 1.7 million.
Okay.
The biggest pay-per-view McGregor has ever had, and again, it's not just McGregor because his cards are huge, was 1.3. That's UFC 202.
Okay.
And that wasn't just because Nate Diaz is a proven star. Like, it takes two to play that game. So that's my argument. I don't know if it makes any sense or if you guys agree with it. But that's
true, but it's like, but you still have to think, what other MMA superstar and everything is going to sit down and have a sit-down talk with Ariel Helwani and be able to generate a huge amount of pay-per-view buys?
I could give you a few.
Well, that's the thing.
GSP. I'd put good money on GSP doing the same thing. I'd bet the house on Ronda. Ronda, wherever she goes, whatever she does, that will get viewers. And I'd say GSP would get close, if not equal it. Ronda would probably double it. That's just how crazy people are. I mean, did you see the bump WWE got? And they didn't even make it official. It's not. She hasn't even signed officially. They're going nuts over there. Look at the buzz. In his heyday, Chuck Liddell would have probably done really good. Brock, any day, anytime, any place. And I'm not even a huge fan of Brock, but it's just like, you can't deny star power. The guy can guarantee you 1 million pay-per-view buys, and his cards weren't always the greatest.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever he'd show up, you were guaranteed. Like, I think his worst selling pay-per-view was like about 600,000. So there you go. There's another one. Yeah, Brock would do just as good. And to me, Brock is a bigger star than McLeprechaun.
More than likely.
Yeah, well, the proof is in the numbers. Like, they didn't have to invest that much money in Brock. Like, they gave him a push. They probably pushed him more than anybody else, apart from McLeprechaun, but they never even came. Like, they didn't have to. They never had to. They never had to build Brock. He came in, like, wherever he goes, whatever he does, he'll have viewers, just like Ronda, just like GSP is different. GSP isn't a personality. He's a great fighter, and he's a superstar fighter, but it's not, it's not the same. But Ronda's just like, wherever she does, I mean, sometimes it's just like for absolute nonsense that people can't get enough of her. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. There's a lot of bullshit when it comes, like, no, he's the most successful hype job ever, but he's also the worst in many ways, because there's a lot of nonsense written about him. There's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of propaganda and just outright lies when it comes to McLeprechaun. That's the way I see it. Like, you have to call it like it is. It's like, like he's handed a lot of titles. Like, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, but in the latest pound for pound rankings, he's ranked number 2 pound for pound, ahead of GSP. If any list where McLeprechaun, any MMA list where McLeprechaun is ranked higher than GSP is just useless. It's completely baseless, and it's worth nothing. You cannot ever rank McLeprechaun ahead of GSP. It just can't be done. That's the way I see it. So, like, there's a lot of stuff. Like, as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't even deserve to be in the top 5 pound for pound, because he hasn't defended his title once. That's supposed to count against you in the pound for pound. Like, even in boxing's a mess in many ways. There's a lot of nonsense in boxing. They would never allow that. He would be out of the top 10 for the simple reason that he hasn't. And I mean, like, let's be honest, as corrupt and as disgraceful as boxing is, he would have never been allowed to do what he did for the last 3 years. As far as, just not defending his title. He would have been stripped a long time ago.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So, I mean, but off the topic of McGregor for the time being, one topic that we actually needed, to talk about and actually bring to most people's attention is Anderson Silva yet again pissing hot, and how USADA is handling and dealing with all this mess. Like, and that topic, what do you all think about that? Like, Anderson Silva pissed hot again. Like, what is it, the 3rd, 4th time so far?
Second, right? This is the second time he's failed a drug test. If I'm not
It's just
mistaken.
like so much.
He has a history.
Well, yeah. Sadly, yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, I've made my feelings clear as far as USADA goes. It was a very, very bad deal. The way it was imposed on fighter was wrong. But at the same time, like, I'll just be honest here. Like, I have a lot of respect for Anderson Silva's accomplishments, but he was never one of my favorite fighters. He was never, I never bought into the whole he's the greatest of all time. I always had. I mean, I'm biased, but I always thought GSP was better. And I mean, to me, he ain't even the greatest Brazilian champion in MMA. Like, for me, that title goes to Jose Aldo. And I mean, just out of preference, like, I rooted against him quite a few times. Like, when he fought Vitor, I rooted for Vitor. When he fought Nate Marquardt, I was rooting for Nate, even though, I knew it was going to be tough. I rooted for Chris Weidman. I actually called it. I got mocked a lot, by the way, but when he got matched up with Chris, I knew it was going to happen. I didn't know it would happen that way, but like, he's one of the most talented fighters, without doubt, to ever grace the octagon. But I don't know what to tell you. Like, he had obvious flaws. He had obvious
what type
flaws
of
in the
flaw?
sense that he was mentally weak.
Who, Anderson Silva?
Yeah. He
Okay,
was a
all
head
right.
case. I always found him to be mentally weak. Like he he often would turn down fights. He often would like if you remember, like I mean, he two or three of the worst title fights ever were because of him. I mean, I can think of two immediately: Dallas Lighties, and Damian Maya, and they were all his fault, especially Damian Maya. Like that was probably one of the worst title fights ever, and that was his fault. Like remember, it took a while for people to warm to him because of nonsense like that, and but like I'm not gonna throw him under the bus as far as like failing another drug test because like it's too easy to fail drug tests these days. They have way too many like there's way too many supplements and banned substances. Like if you make too many laws, it's easier to break the law. If you got too many laws, you have to keep it simple. Anabolic steroids, and the thing is that the fighters were never ever like you look at any other sport, fighters have a say in everything, in any policy. And in MMA, they were just it was imposed on them, and it's one of the worst. It's one of the most unreasonable. I mean, fighters are literally treated like criminals as far as the testing goes. MMA fighters, UFC fighters, pardon. So, like, I'm not gonna judge until I find out more about it. But like, that doesn't affect his legacy. I mean, his legacy was affected a long time ago. The way he lost versus Weidman, the way he lost the second one. I mean, he was injured, but the fact that he often lost. I mean, he lost a decision to Bisping, which I thought he shouldn't have lost. But a big part of the reason he lost was he gave Bisping every opportunity to win because he was more interested with horsing around and fooling around than fighting. It cost him versus Weidman. Like as far as I'm concerned, when he fought Weidman, he lost that fight at the weigh-ins. Remember his behavior at the weigh-in. So like, but as far as this failed drug test, it doesn't look good. It's a bad look. But like I defended John Jones on both his failed drug tests, and I do not believe John Jones is a cheat. So I can only give like I don't want to be a hypocrite, so I will give Anderson Silva the same benefit of the doubt. Like I don't even really care that he's failed a drug test. It doesn't look good. It's bad for his legacy, but to me, in my eyes, it doesn't really change his standing as a fighter. He's one of the greatest, but he's just outside like the top five of the greatest of all time. Like Randy Couture was a better fighter as far as I'm concerned. Jose Aldo, I've already said Ronda's ahead of him as well, but not because of his failed drug test, because of like just everything else I just listed. That's my personal opinion, anyways. Any thoughts, Gerald?
No, just no thought for me. I mean, that was just straightforward as it got. I mean, yeah. Hey, what can you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, like it's sad because like everybody's gonna jump on him. You're gonna have like, I mean, you've already got Michael Bisping going on and on about like, oh yeah, he was on drugs the whole time.
Who
Completely
Bisping
unfair.
said Bisping said who was on drugs the whole time?
Anderson Silva, but I mean, he accused GSP of being on drugs the whole time
Oh, is that
as well, and
is that right?
GSP has never. Yeah, he did, but he accuses everybody. Like honestly, people like that, I, I'll, I'd actually like it's the whole what's it called, Bill Cosby effect. When it comes to Michael Bisping, I believe there's a very, I mean, already like there's no question about it. Bisping is one of the biggest cheats, if not the biggest cheats in MMA history. Like you watch his way of fighting. Even the other day when he fought GSP, he cheated multiple times, like grabbing gloves, hits below the belt, pokes, eye pokes, sticking your fingers, like small joint manipulation. Every dirty trick in the book spitting his gum shield out to buy himself some time, stuff like that. He's done it. Every dirty trick in the book, he's played it. Blatantly cheating. So he's a dirty fighter. And I would not, like, if one day he pisses hot and it comes out that he's been cheating his whole career, like actually like taking performance enhancing drugs, I wouldn't be surprised, because he's just like, I call it the Bill Cosby effect, when you're going around accusing everybody of, you know, that like the Bard said, one doth think thou protestest too much and too loudly. That's how I see it. He's always going on about so-and-so's on drugs. The only reason I lost is because this guy was on drugs. You know, that's just like, it's so.
I think Bisping largely blows his mouth off like that because I honestly think that the UFC pays him to do it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure they have, you know, like he's one of Dana's best friends. He's one of Dana's, I mean, it's not even a friend. He's Dana's toady. He's Dana's stool pigeon too, because he's ratted out plenty of fighters to Dana over the years. He ratted out freaking Chuck Liddell. It's it's not a very known story, but like Chuck Liddell had signed the contract for like a lot of money to fight in the WC versus, I believe, what's his name, Chael Sonnen. It was a done deal, and Bisping was the one who ratted him out to Dana, and Dana could put the kibosh on it. He's also, I mean, he screwed over a ton of people over the years. Like he screwed over Rampage. And even Rampage, like, he said, you know, like, Rampage was one of the main people who helped out Bisping when he first signed for the UFC. Like, a lot of people didn't like him. He's a very easy guy to dislike. A lot of people didn't want to train with him, and Rampage was the one who took him in under his wing. He, you know, like, Rampage had that Wolf's Lair gym in England.
Yeah.
He's the one who brought him in there, who hooked him up with everybody, hooked him up with freaking sponsors. Like, you know, remember, Rampage is one of the biggest stars ever in MMA history. Whether it was Pride, whether it was Cage Rage, whether it was the UFC. I mean, that guy's a legit pay-per-view star as well. And the one time he needed Bisping's help was because he was having a court case with sponsors or an old manager, and he asked Bisping to speak up for him in court, to be a witness, and Bisping completely threw him under the bus and fucked him over. So yeah. So yeah, that's Bisping. But then again, you know, like, being a heel always works out for people, even though Bisping can't sell a pay-per-view. But, you know, like, he's, you know, it's always, you know, he's a guy you love to hate.
The WWE promotion has people like that too.
Yeah, the difference is in the WWE. Oh, Michael Bisping is for real. He's a real.
Well, but that makes it all the more exacerbating, is that here I am making a comparison between a UFC, a legitimate sport, or a legitimate concern, and I'm comparing it to a theatrical concern, the WWE, and we're all agreeing.
Ain't that crazy?
Well, it's yes, it is, and it's sad. Just the word SAD, sad. It's sad. It's nothing but money. That's all it is, and I'm kind of sick and tired of it myself. I'm so sick of the UFC, I could just shit. Just sick of it. I mean, this last 217, that was a great presentation. That was a great event. There were good things that happened there, some good sport. But that's the only good thing I can say about the UFC recently. The rest of anything else I can say about the UFC is concerned with underhanded crap, and I'm just tired of it. I'm sick of it. Totally
I
sick of
couldn't
it.
agree more. I agree with everything you just said, man. Like, it's the UFC 217 without doubt was one of the greatest events ever, if not the greatest.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and McGregor wasn't a part of it.
yeah, well, I'm of the opinion that the reason it was so good because there was a purity to it, there was a meritocracy to it, just like UFC 216, just like
Well,
UFC.
it was fun. It was fun.
And it was all about MMA. It really was, and
Yeah.
it was about like true greats coming.
Yep.
Like, come on, like for the
Yep.
first time, it was a historical card because for the first time in MMA history, three champions showed up, and all three of them lost their belts. Okay, one of
Yeah.
them, it's extremely debatable, champion in name only. He was a paper champion, Michael Bisping, but like Cody Garbrandt was a legitimate champion.
Yeah.
He lost, and we didn't even talk about that. But T.J. Dillashaw's stunning performance versus Cody Garbrandt after being seriously hurt at the end of the first round, came back and knocked out Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt was undefeated in the UFC.
Uh-huh.
He'd never lost, and he got knocked out. Rose Namajunas. I mean, I'm just gonna read the I'll just read the complete card and the results. It started at bantamweight with Ramos. Ricardo Ramos defeating Ayman Zahabi, Firas Zahabi's younger brother, by KO, spinning back elbow in the third round. Curtis Blades beating Oleski Olenek via TKO by a doctor stoppage. That's another stoppage. Randy Brown defeating Mickey Gall, previously undefeated, very talented Mickey Gall. He's very young, he's still green, but still by unanimous decision. That's your first decision. Oben St. Preux knocking out Corey Anderson by head kick, knockout, cold. One of the greatest head kick knockouts I've ever seen. Mark Godbeer versus Walt Harris. That was a disqualification, illegal head kick, but like that was a disgrace. The less said about this, the better. Like Walt Harris got robbed, just like John Jones. James Vick knocking out Joseph Duffy by TKO. That was another spectacular. So far, only one decision. Middleweight. Now we're talking about the pay-per-view card. Paula Borrachinha Costa defeating Johnny Hendricks by TKO in round 2. Then we have only the second decision. The second decision on the whole card. Stephen Thompson defeating Jorge Gamebred Masvidal via decision, which was one of the most action-packed decisions ever, via unanimous decision. Rose Namajunas shocking the world and knocking out Joanna Jędrzejczyk in round 1 after 3 minutes. T.J. Dillashaw knocking out Cody Garbrandt in round 2. And, of course, George St. Pierre submitting Michael the Cunt Bisping in round 3. So like, that's one of the greatest cards ever. It's as far as like action, results, whatever you want to look at, but it was also like the return of GSP. One of the greatest superstars the sport has ever seen. And it was just fun. And it was all about MMA. There was no, and they didn't even promote it properly. Like there's a good chance it made it went over 1 million pay-per-view buys. They did not even promote this card like they've done any other. Like they've promoted other cards way better this year than this one, and this one is probably gonna be the biggest success of the year as far as MMA. Jim, if you'd like, what do you say about like we discuss Dana White's latest comments and lies and just nonsense?
About what?
You up for that? Why, you want to hear him?
Well, have I heard? I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, okay, look, I'll play him for you and our listeners, and then we'll discuss.
All right.
All right, here we go.
It drives me crazy when I see
Can you hear?
Nope.
stories about the business. Know what you know about the business? What I tell you, that's what you know.
Secret numbers that come out are just reports. There's nothing factual about it.
There's nothing factual about anything that's ever written about this business. You know what I mean? Believe me, we know how to run this business. Look at where we are. Everybody wants to doubt me again. You're going to doubt me again? You're going to doubt that after all the things that we've accomplished and all the things that we've done in building this brand of the sport, you're going to continue to doubt? Continue to doubt and watch what we do over the next 5 years. I saw Cowherd comes out today and says, I'm burnt out and I want to be on a sailboat with the Fertitas and all this. You call me Cowherd. You know nothing about me or this business. So keep your yap shut.
It seems like you're always interested in foil. You have somebody.
Oh, I love it. No, it's my favorite thing. When people come out and open their mouth about that they shouldn't be talking about because they know nothing about it, it's my favorite thing. And yesterday, it's not like I was out trying to say the business. That guy asked me a question. How's life been since the last time you were here at Madison Square Garden? I said, funny you should ask. We're going to be number 1. We're going to be number 3. I want that number 2 spot too. And this is the best year in the company's history. The thing gets written, it drives me crazy. People who've never built a business, people who know nothing about running a business, people who have never had people who depend on a paycheck from them, all have advice and want to talk about your business when you know absolutely nothing about this business.
Who are you going after next?
I'm not going after anybody, but for Cowherd to come out today and say that he said, especially a guy who for a long time has been one of our biggest fans. Now our deal is up with Fox, and Cowherd's talking about stuff he has no clue what he's talking about. 100%. It's 100% what's going on. It's dirty business tactics. And Cowherd is a guy who I've been on his show many times. I've known him for a long time.
Canada, TSN taking care of the UFC.
Oh yeah, well, thank you.
Is this Donald Trump?
Welcome back to Pro MMA Radio. I'm your host, Larry Pep.
Go ahead, Jim.
Is this sounds like Donald Trump defending some bullshit decision that he made?
Right? And just talking absolute nonsense because
basically
you heard everything, right?
It's white noise.
This was
It's white noise.
Yeah,
That's
no,
all
it
it
is.
is.
But what's really interesting, what's extremely interesting is this was the UFC 217 post fight press conference. That was that was the press conference after the event.
Yeah.
So like him just going off on it. It's not the most embarrassing rant he's ever been on, but it's very revealing. I thought it was very revealing, and I thought it was very revealing for him to say that this was the greatest year the UFC have ever had, and the fact that he counted the Maymack fight, the Mayweather versus McLeprechaun fight as an MMA, he made the argument that it should count as a UFC achievement when it really shouldn't, because it had nothing to do with MMA. It had nothing to do with, it was boxing. It was a joke.
Well,
So
it had to do with promotion, the word and the act of promotion. It had nothing to do with MMA. So Dana can say, in that context, Dana can say anything he wants, but you have to be intelligent enough to know the difference.
Yeah, but he's also it makes him, the UFC, and MMA look bad when he insists on. I mean, the UFC had no control over that that whole event. It was Mayweather Promotions and Showtime.
The only thing they had to do with it was that they had McGregor under contract. That was it.
That's it. But they didn't promote anything. If anything, they cost that fight
Yeah.
pay-per-view buys because they couldn't provide. They sold they sold coverage. They sold pay-per-views on their Fight Pass platform,
Mhm.
and hundreds of thousands of customers couldn't even watch it because they didn't even ensure that they had the right kind of
Equipment.
platform to equipment to support it. So if anything, they cost. So for him to, I just find it really funny that he insists on counting.
But 9 out of 10 fans of the UFC don't know what you just said. And so they're going to listen to Dana White's diatribe that he just said that we listened to, and they're going to think, God, Colin Cowherd really is an asshole. That's what they're going to think.
Colin Cowherd actually, like whether you like him or not, and a lot of people don't, he's actually a very good journalist. He's no Stephen.
Yeah, but McGregor's fans aren't going to believe that.
And you know what's really funny is what's his name? Colin Cowherd has been one of Dana White's biggest supporters and allies in mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
Like for years, he's done at least ever since Colin Cowherd made the move from ESPN to Fox. He's been one of his biggest allies. Always gave him coverage. Always gave him a fair shake. Often wouldn't call him out on his bullshit. The first time, and he didn't even say anything negative. He just questioned. Like it was almost like defending him because like Dana White's come under a lot of criticism in the last 2 years, and rightly so, for like some very disgraceful and shady practices. And he was almost defending him when he said what, like Dana was all bent out of shape, like, oh fuck you, Colin, because all Colin said is like, oh, all Colin Cowherd said was like maybe he's not as motivated as he used to be. Maybe he's thinking about enjoying retirement and hanging out with the Fertittas. That's all he said. There was nothing abusive or incendiary about what he said. And Dana's like freaking out, like as Dana does, like fuck you, Colin Cowherd. So, and like I see your point too. Like a lot of what he says is to get extra attention, but like sometimes attention ain't always the best thing, especially when you're not doing things right, when you're doing things wrong. And I mean, I also wanted this like you didn't hear it in that particular segment, but in the last couple of weeks, Dana came out and said that John Jones is unredeemable, that he has no hope. There's no like hope of him ever, which is like one of the harshest things you can say about someone who hasn't he hasn't covered himself in glory. John Jones made plenty of mistakes, but who hasn't? And he hasn't killed anybody. He isn't some hardened criminal. He makes some really boneheaded decisions and some huge mistakes. But I mean, like, I'm sorry, like, I could give you 100,000 athletes who've done 10 times worse. There's athletes out there who are celebrated, who've actually killed people, or people have died because of their actions, and who don't get a quarter of the abuse John Jones gets. I'm not defending and giving John Jones a free pass. Like, he's made mistakes, but at least he's come out and admitted it. There's plenty of athletes who've done much worse who don't even get that kind of criticism. And for him to say that, I thought was really out of line, because like Dana played a huge part in John Jones' downfall and problems, because like he did like post UFC 150, like calling a press conference just to dump on John Jones and his coach was just really bad. And just like even Don King never did that. Don King never did that. right? And then his just continued his that he's the UFC or the Zuffa want to make moves into boxing. Just I mean, they can do what they want, but at the same time, it's just not a good look. Like, you got your hands full with the UFC. You got your hands full with MMA. Like, you're doing, like, this year has not been. I mean, it's gonna end up well, and a big part of it was thanks to GSP. The fact that GSP's back, because they didn't have any stars, because we're going back to like the whole McLeprechaun thing, but they spent so much time, money, and resources into McGregor. They've completely mistreated the others. They've forgotten everybody else. Like this year was a very bad year. It was one of their worst years ever. If it hadn't been for UFC 214 and UFC 217, it would probably be their worst year since 2014. And I think it was even worse than 2014. It might have been worse than 2014 if you take those two pay-per-views out, because they've had some very, very low-selling pay-per-views. I mean, UFC 216 was one of the greatest as far as like action and results ever, but it did not sell very well. I don't even know if it sold 300,000. UFC 213 was one of the lowest-selling pay-per-views ever. It was a great pay-per-view. But it did not sell. The Yoel Romero versus Robert Whittaker interim belt. The UFC 215, another great card, but that didn't sell well at all. Valentina versus Amanda Nunes. They completely lost sight of what brought them to the dance. Because, I mean, basically, this whole year, it's almost like Dana just forgot about MMA and just spent almost all of his time and energy promoting McGregor. Like, he's literally become McLeprechaun's personal manager in Hype Man. Like, that's what 217 as far as Dana White goes. And oh yeah, when he isn't, he's throwing every single fighter under the bus, one way or another. Remember, he began the year with that famous quote about UFC 208, when Holly Holm fought Jermaine Durandamy for the featherweight belt. The best thing about that event was the flight home, which is just unbelievably stupid and disrespectful. Just his comments about Tyron Woodley, his comments about GSP, lying about GSP, taking the title, announcing a title fight between GSP and Michael the Cunt Bisping, a title fight without a date or a venue. That was great. And then lying about the fact that GSP was had the fight taken away from him because he refused to fight, when GSP had clearly had informed the UFC brass that he wasn't ready to fight before November. He told them from the off, and they said, "Oh yeah, keep that to yourself. We need to promote it." So that was their fault. But then he lied about that, and that's when you've got independent contractors, you're hurting their brand. So he's done a lot of damage, just him by himself. So
are you calling Dana White a liar?
Yeah, I guess so.
What
Breaking
a
news,
jackass!
everybody.
You're a jackass. Called Dana a
Yeah,
liar.
And according to Tyron Woodley, I may be a racist too.
Can't win for losing.
Really can't.
No, but it's not been a great year for the UFC. It's not. GSP has kind of really rescued things, but it could have been. I honestly believe 217 up till 214, 2017 for the UFC was going to be their worst year. If it wasn't for UFC 214 and 217 and 216, it would have been one of the worst years in UFC history, because it was really bad. It was that bad. Whether it's selling, whether it's bad headlines, whether it's ridiculous interim belts, unnecessary interim belts. Their lack of their complete lack of action when it comes to like
When you say
champions
a bad
refusing
year, you mean like
to
MMA,
fight.
MMA wise or money wise?
Every way you look at it, it was really bad. Like, I don't know if you heard, but like the fact that Dana insisted on counting Maymack, the Mayweather versus McGregor fight, as like a UFC event was ridiculous. And he did that right after UFC 270 because he said it's the greatest year in our history. And I believe as well, like he was talking about the money they made, but they didn't make money. They got bailed out. They got a cash injection of over $2.5 billion. There was some they got $1 billion from investors in Canada and then $1.5 billion, if I'm not mistaken, from Singapore. Like big hitters from Singapore. So that's not money you made. That's money you needed to borrow, or like, or if they might have sold parts of the UFC to get that money. That's not money. That's you can't count that. I wouldn't agree with counting that. And then the fact that he insists on saying on counting Mayweather versus McLeprechaun as a UFC event is just laughable, because the only thing the UFC did on that card, all they had to do was show up, but they found a way to actually cost that event pay-per-view buys, if you remember what happened. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about like Dana's latest words of wisdom.
Okay, that's totally understood. Oh, well, I mean, I guess Dana White, or at least his name is going to continue going down in infamy, and not in a good way, considering all the events that have happened this year. Well, especially with this group so far. So, I mean, do you feel the same way, Jim,
About what?
about our buddy Dana White?
Oh, Dana? Yeah, I pretty much agree with Cyrus's opinion of Dana. In fact, I can't think of anything that I disagree with Cyrus on. I think Dana. I don't. I think as soon as they find somebody that can replace him, he's gone. That's what I think. I don't know. I think we had this conversation the other day, Cyrus and I think you mentioned Chael Sonnen. He could do what he could promote like Dana does right now.
He'd do twice the job Dana does.
Well,
Because
what I want to say is
that
that Dana knows where all the skeletons are buried. So nobody's gonna fire him right out of the gate. Something's going to have to happen to make him look really bad, and then they'll 86 him.
Yeah, well, yeah. Dana knows where the skeletons are, but he ain't the only one, and
Yeah.
he's starting to become one of the biggest bones in said skeleton. So, like I that's what I think. I could be wrong, but I think that he's starting to become an embarrassment. There was even a time when the Fertitas owned Pop Company. It was still a mom and pop like shop or store, as they call it, the way they ran it. But we're talking about a multinational company in WME IMG with some huge hitters. I mean, Hewlett Packard is one of the shareholders of we're talking about some very big people, and even Ari Emanuel is a huge hitter. And like as much as Dana's and him get along, like when it comes to money, there are no friends.
Mm-hmm.
So like continues costing them money, and he has this year. Just it's not a good thing. It's not a good look, and they're gonna have to get rid of him eventually if he keeps going down this path, because he's been worse than ever this year. He said some really stupid things. And I mean, like, he's done some illegal things, like the one that comes to mind, and he's done it plenty of times. And there's rumors, there's conspiracy theories, but I'm not even going to go down that path. I love a good conspiracy theory, but like even like the one you said, it's very feasible about the whole McLeprechaun cage nonsense. But like, let's say something that it's not arguable. It actually happened. There's proof. It's the whole John Jones versus Vitor bout at UFC. I believe it was 151 or 152, where they allowed John Jones. They knowingly, blatantly allowed John Jones to fight Vitor, who failed a drug test. Not only did they allow him to fight without giving him the choice, without letting him know, they covered it up. That's illegal. Like, you could actually take all of them to court, and Dana included for that. So if John Jones ever decides, I'd be very interested to know what would happen if John Jones ever took him to court over that, and he still has the right to do so. So if he ever did, that could be very interesting. And now, you're starting to see the fighter, the class action court case suits. The fighters have filed against the UFC in Zuffa. It's picking up momentum. You've got Mark Hunt's class action suit that's picking up momentum too. And then, like, this week was huge in the sense that, like, people are really listening about fighters' rights and the UFC's just unfair practices. Like, people are really listening. So it's things are going to get very interesting in the next few months. I know he's friends with the president, so that, like, Dana White is personal friends with the president, but like with Donald Trump. But even Donald Trump, he's let go people, like friends, personal friends before. Like, look what he did to Roger Stone, and he's done it to plenty. And there's plenty of his friends who are falling like flies. So if Dana is an embarrassment to the U.S. president or Donald Trump, like, don't, like I said, when it comes to money and embarrassment and reputation at that level, I don't know if you have friends, real friends. That's my 2 cents anyway.
It's a good 2 cents.
Dana White's famous line, "We were never friends."
Oh my God, I'll never forget that one. What was it? Stitch. That was nice. That was classy. And remember the way they got rid of what's his name? I mean, to me, he's a Hall of Famer. The Goldie. The way they got rid of Goldie, that was really disgusting too. Like, that guy's a legend. Whether you like him or not, whether you think he's funny, like, you think he's a goofball, that man was great. And the way they just let him go without even giving him a send-off was really disgraceful. Like, that guy has been there from the like, for years, along with Joe Rogan, calling out some of the greatest events, some of the most, some of the biggest pay-per-view cards, some of the biggest fights. It's unforgettable, and they couldn't even be bothered to even say thank you.
Yep.
And like, yeah. And the fact that, like, the way they just got rid, like, he didn't even put up a fight when they got rid of Matt Hughes and Chuck Liddell and lots of others. Like, these guys, the only guy they kept was Forrest Griffin. I'm very happy about that. But, like, they screwed over a lot of people, and like, Chuck Liddell isn't happy, and he shouldn't be, because, like, he was promised a job for life with the UFC,
Right.
and
so Dana didn't stick up for him, apparently, but that'll eventually all come back to him, as they say.
Life's a boomerang, ain't it? Sometimes karma's a bitch.
Pretty much. So we'll just see where all that ends up in terms of all that blowback he gets from people like Chuck Liddell that he is already screwed over. So we'll just have to see.
Absolutely.
So, since we have hit all our topics for tonight on this episode, Cyrus, Jim, do you have anything else that you want to say for tonight?
No, I think we covered 217 pretty well. I'm satisfied that we did. This I kind of like the next time we get together to talk about this this Conor McGregor thing that happened, and also the fact that Tyron Woodley is being thought about to fight Nick Diaz next, and whether or
Yeah,
not Nick, but Nate, and whether or not Nate even knows about it.
Yep. No, that would yeah. We'll see. Like, it will be interesting to we'll definitely discuss. Like, they're obviously gonna either do something like sanction him or not. It will be interesting to discuss that, whether their actions or their non-actions towards McGregor, or McLeprechaun, as I like to call him.
Okay.
And yeah, definitely, Woodley versus Nick Diaz title fight would be really interesting, whether it happens or not. Yeah, I mean, we'll be back either next week or sometime next week.
All right. Cool enough. Well, I mean, I guess that's the end of our episode. Yet again, fans, thank you for joining us for this episode. This is G here, and I'm very thankful that you all listened to us, joined us, and don't forget to like and subscribe because we really love MMA. We want you all to hear the other side of MMA from Jim, from Roberto when he's here, from Cyrus, just anytime. So, yet again, thank you all for joining us. Jim, Cyrus?
Cyrus out.
Yep, Jim out.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe.